If you could just introduce yourselves, just let us know who you are and how you're involved in the project or in the themes of the films that we've just seen. I'll start with you, Jaz.
So I'm Jaz, and I am the presenter of Climate Scam.
I'm Jenny. I'm here representing the Climate Psychology Alliance. I'm not myself a therapist, but I'm very interested in climate activism and the psychological impacts of it. I'm actually also a district councillor where I live in Sussex for the Green Party, so that's my other area of involvement.
I'm Claire Wallerstein. I'm the producer of #ClimateScam. I've been making these climate change documentaries for about 5 years now, having previously, I guess my way into environmental stuff was moving back to live in Cornwall about 15 years ago. I'd been living in Spain and taking my kids down to beaches where I'd played as a child and finding them completely covered in plastic, which I didn't remember from when I was a kid. And I set up and ran a beach cleaning group, marine plastic pollution campaigning group for quite a long time, and sort of slowly started to think, hang on a minute, this is just part of a much bigger problem that's affecting the ocean. It's actually climate change. And that was why we started making these films, to try and sort of get people to put two and two together, because it feels like plastic is one of those issues that people really get, I suppose it's an environmental problem we can see right on our doorstep and we can understand the impact of, in a way that climate change hasn't really sort of resonated.
It's kind of in your face, isn't it? You can't really hide from plastics if you're on the beach and there's a can, there's something here, or it's in the way. And so I think you're absolutely right. It's a good entry point for people. I mean, my children go regularly to beach cleaning and picking up rubbish and plastic. So, yeah, I agree with your point. You kind of answered my first question that I was going to ask, which was what brought you into this sort of like environment and topic, climate change and crisis. I was wondering, Jenny, if you could tell us how your journey brought you here.
I've been concerned about the climate, I remember, since I was a teenager, which is clearly a very, very long time ago, and had the sort of reassurances so I'm really talking about like 1970, and, my fears were dismissed as being, but as it happens, obviously the process was well underway. And I just had a crisis. I been very worried about it ever since, and considered not having children because I was worried about it. But a bit like whoever was in the film, I did it anyway. And I had a very awful conversation with someone. It was almost exactly 10 years ago, which plunged me into absolute despair. And I actually just went online and Googled, is there any hope anywhere? And finally found Al Gore's Climate Reality Project and went and trained with them in Miami in 2015. And dear Al Gore is still fighting to, and it helped me to just really face up to things and actually have a role, which I think is addressed in the film and other work that we've done. You feel better if you do something.
Yeah.
Okay. And then now the Green Party thing, I ran as a councillor and was elected 3 or 4 years ago, but of course district and borough councils are not going to be around in 3 years, but my involvement with the Green Party will obviously continue on some level.
Jaz?
And I'm Jaz. So I've always been interested in climate and just nature in general and all natural things. So I tend to have a lot of discussions about things like this with my clients. And Claire Wallerstein is one of my clients. So we got talking about the climate and everything, and what Claire's been doing to help. And she asked me to be in her film. So yeah, and this is my first sort of step into this world.
I think you did a fantastic job. Really blown away with you. Very talented. I wanted to know a little bit more about the process of making the film. I know that you're Claire's hairdresser, but how did you go about finding some of the climate scientists and the activists that were in the film? How did that process come about?
So that's my role, really.
Yeah.
So
as a producer, yes.
Yeah. So I guess Cornwall's not the biggest place in the world, and having made several films already, you sort of have your tentacles out and your spidey senses, and you kind of have people on your radar. So it wasn't really that difficult at all to find the scientists and the activists, because they are there. What was really difficult was getting the skeptic. Yeah. So really what precipitated this film, because we never ever imagined making a film about climate misinformation, because you think, well, surely, this day and age, everybody gets it. We all know that there's this problem. And it's funny how when you're very embedded in the world of climate, you can also be quite kind of blinkered, because you're in a bubble. We're all in our bubbles that social media algorithms kind of feed us, aren't we? And I'd never really come across much misinformation or conspiracy theories. It was only an event that we had to go to that suddenly I was confronted by a couple of people who were part of this movement called Time to Wake Up Cornwall, and I just had this conversation with them that blew my mind. Really nice people, kind of shaking with righteous anger, but to actually speak to full-on conspiracy theorists, where some of the things that they're saying may well be right, but they've kind of created this kind of really comforting fabric where everything has an explanation and everything fits together. And it was fascinating to me. So I thought, oh my God, we need to make a film about this. And this is a group that has a lot of following on Facebook. So I reached out to them because they'd been saying to me, oh, the problem is nobody ever listens to us. So I reached out and I said, well, we'll listen to you. It'd be really interesting to speak to somebody. Would anyone come and be interviewed? And they were like, oh no, well, we're not going to talk to you because you just make us look stupid. So the only person that came forward was Tony, the guy in the film. So I wouldn't say he's a full-on climate denier, but very, very skeptical, and possibly with good reason, about government motivations about things. But I think that for me personally, that was the most powerful thing, going out to visit him. We had such a funny day with him, didn't we, Jaz? But we all walked away afterwards just saying, completely agreed with about 80% of what he was saying.
Yeah, exactly that. He seems like a really lovely guy. I completely agreed with a lot of what he was saying, but it goes to show that the fine line, there's a very fine line, isn't there, between those deniers and people who've sort of made this right in their own minds. I found that really interesting. Was there anything that surprised you when you were filming? Any of the reactions or any of the comments?
The most surprising thing, I think, was when we were doing the street interviews and everyone had an opinion, and then when it came, a lot of people they didn't like the Just Stop Oil's protests and things. Some of them agreed, but no one seemed to know the science behind it. When we started asking the questions like, oh, so what are the levels of CO2? No one seemed to know. So it's quite scary that people have a really strong opinion about something that they don't know about, but then they won't trust the scientists. So, we trust our doctors about health advice. People trust your hairdressers about what hairstyle to get. But when it comes to climate science, there seems to be a big denial, and that was really surprising.
Jenny, some of the reactions in climate anxiety, some of the it's really emotional when you see the effect that it's having on the children, and also in #ClimateScam, some of the climate scientists, there's one guy in particular who my heart just went out to him, because he's devoted his life to this work, and it's being completely just disregarded. I wondered, with some of the work that you do in the cafes, do you have climate scientists that attend those? And I just wondered, what's it like? What does an average cafe session look like?
If only there was an average, I'd be able to describe that. But I would say everyone's different. But yes, there are some common threads. Mainly these ones, the Climate Psychology Alliance, climate cafes. There are other groups that do climate cafes and of a quite different type and with a different aim. But ours, it has a very specific set of, as you would expect, of guidelines and a formula. But what happens is, because they're mainly done online now, so we can actually have participants from all over the world. In fact, in practice, that tends to mean Europe and North America, and we've occasionally had people from South Africa, which is obviously on the same sort of time zone as us. So not so, but the stories that come are very interesting. I've forgotten what you wanted me to focus on, Micallar. Sorry, it was on the emotions that come out.
Yeah, and it also, like, if you have climate scientists that attend.
I personally haven't,
Okay.
but I expect we do have those. But in general, and I wish we did. It would actually be nice to see that, because I think there is a very high level of anxiety amongst climate scientists. I've read about this before, and it's natural. I mean, once you've looked in and seen, it's difficult to really get away from it. There's a range of emotions that are expressed, and that's really the beauty of it, is that it's a safe space to really share your feelings. And it's clear from a lot of these that it's the first time that, or it's rare for people to be able to do that, because for the reactions that we all know about and I'm sure have experienced, of either ridicule or, oh, well, who cares? Or, oh, here's Jenny, we better stop talking about this. As though I'm the only one who's going to experience climate breakdown. That's the thing that I feel like it's not just me, So it's that, but it's by necessity. I think usually they last about an hour and a half, and we have 6 or 7 or maybe 8 people. So we want to be fair and let people express things. But it's obviously, we particularly don't want to really upset people and leave them perhaps sitting in their own living room feeling very distressed. So it's quite a management process that it works. So it does really work very well. And I think people have always felt the benefit of it. But we do have a lot of people who are already pretty active, like conservationists who've worked various places and are able to bring stories of what they actually see on the ground. A lot of parents and grandparents and educators. So it's a mix. But I'm always pretty specific. There's 2 of us that co-facilitate, so we take turns going through it. And I said to someone right at the outset, look, it's what we want to do at the end is to leave people feeling not buoyed up with optimism and not depressed so much that they go and hit the whiskey, but something of just calm and grounded. And I think that the formula tends to produce that. And I think that is the most helpful state to be in generally in the world to get things done. There's no point running around with false hope. And likewise, we don't want to be paralyzed by despair. So sorry, I think I've gone a long way around just sort of addressing that, but that's how it works in general. And then every facilitator, I mean, a lot of I'm not a therapist, as I said, so when I'm working with someone who is, there's sometimes a little bit of a different flavor to it, but the feedback is pretty consistently very good indeed. So we're doing something right there.
Thank you.
Come along. Come to a climate cafe.
I will.
Even from Dubai or wherever you are.
Tell everyone I live. I didn't realise they were online.
Yes.
I thought they were all
in
person.
We do have. I mean, I've been running an in-person one in Sussex, and what's nice about that is that instead of talking about tea and cake, you can actually have tea and vegan cake. But otherwise, it's pretty efficient actually having the online ones. So try it. Join us, yes.
I wanted to just switch the perspective of the conversation a little bit. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to work with Picture House Green Screen, particularly with hashtag Climate Scam, is because of you, Jaz. It's very unusual to see a black woman fronting a film about climate change and the climate crisis. So I think it's a really great way to get other people from the global majority, other black people interested and engaged. So I wanted to ask everybody on the panel what their thoughts are on the sort of lack of diversity in this area, and what your thoughts are on that, and if you have, and how you think we can help make a change and make it more accessible and bring more people, black and brown people, into the conversation. I know there are organisations like Climate Reframe and Climate in Colour and POC in Nature who are doing really great work, but those are coming from a black and brown perspective. So I just wondered what everyone's thoughts on that were. Claire, shall we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, like as you said and as you saw, Jaz is just like a really, really natural presenter. So we come from a part of the country which is really, really white, and I would really hate anybody to think that, oh, we put Jaz there because like it's a sort of tokenistic thing. I think she's just got that amazing every woman quality to be able to speak to everyone.
She does.
Yeah. It's really difficult for me, I guess, coming from kind of like a white perspective, and I can understand up to a point why maybe black and brown people aren't represented as much in this space, because it's that kind of climate justice kind of thing, isn't it? You know, I mean, communities who are having a harder time in many ways just sort of coping with the day-to-day, you know, something that might seem a bit more out there just isn't necessarily all sort of right there on your radar, is it? Of course it is really important, and the people who, you know, we're talking about, oh, you know, what might happen in climate change in 10 or 20 years here, but, you know, the people who are really being impacted by it now are those communities in Africa, in Asia. Yeah, absolutely. And I think within the sort of youth climate movement, there are quite a lot of those voices. And it's just very unfortunate that somehow there isn't that sort of connection being made. I'm really, really passionate about education. So, you know, in this country, one of the things I find absolutely shocking is that still now today, climate change is not a required part of the curriculum until GCSE. Which is mind-blowing. And I think, you know, if we're not equipping our young people with the information to be able to understand this and take it forward, then we're in a really, really bad place when most young people are getting their information about climate change from TikTok or YouTube, you know, which is full of madness. So that's not really answering your question. But I just really hope that, you know, this film can be seen as far and wide as possible, and people will understand that this is about all of us talking to each other, no matter what colour or race or background or ethnicity we're from.
Okay. Jenny?
Yes, I'll be interested to hear what Jaz's perspective is on this, because obviously she's experienced that. I mean, I just hope, they say she's obviously an extremely talented hairdresser, but I'd like to think that she'll end up presenting to a wider audience, because I agree she's got a real natural, and I think the films are really brilliant, by the way. So I've obviously seen an awful lot of films and things about the climate, but I was thoroughly absorbed in these, both of them, so thank you for those. It's a perennial problem, I think, across a wide range of different things. There is the perception, I think, that Claire was just that, you know, if you're actually working in a job that isn't necessarily very well paid or very secure, then, you know, that's going to take a lot of your time, and something like this might be considered to be something of a luxury. And then definitely something that came out when I was out with Extinction Rebellion, and although the movement was extremely sensitive to this, is that many, certainly young black people, did not want to be on the streets where the police were manhandling them for the reasons that we all know about. It was really, it's just obviously a very different sensation if you come from that kind of background.
Yes, that sort of intersection is, it was startling for me when one of the activists was being carried into the van. I just was looking at that thinking, you know, how different that would be if it was a young black man
absolutely
being carried in, and just all of the the implications that follow that afterwards, that really stayed with me, actually.
Yes, of course. And of course, we know across the Atlantic, similar sort of thing that, that we've all probably seen those films about different treatment that's meted out to people of different colours. So that would be a massive demotivator, I think. So, but yes, that's my experience. So thank you.
Sorry, just before you go, Jaz, I was just going to say, with the scenes of the scientists there, that was entirely our comment to the maker of that film. Look at all those climate scientists. Are there no non-white climate scientists that are going out on the streets? And she just said, well, a lot of those people are here on visas, and they just don't have the luxury of being able to stick their neck out, because they're not going to end up in the same situation as those scientists we saw on the screen. So
sorry, what was your original question again?
So my question was, we were looking at, what was my question? Yeah, I mean,
participation rate.
But and just I'm really interested to know how it felt as a young black woman doing, being the face of this documentary. I mean, there aren't any other black people in the film. No. But I just wondered, I suppose what I'm trying to ask is whether you felt that at all, whether that you were conscious of that, or if you're just happy to work on the project and get the message across, or whether you did notice that there aren't many black people or people of colour involved in the conversation.
So so like Claire was saying, I live in Cornwall, so most often than not I am the only black person in a room, so that didn't feel like alien to me or anything. And I feel like the problem is a universal problem, like Claire was saying. It's going to affect the whole world, and we're all of us going to be affected. All of our children are going to be affected. Not only that, all the animals in the world are going to be affected too. I think we just all need to be having this conversation, and I'm really glad that Claire picked me to be in this, because I've learned a hell of a lot just from doing this. And I thought I knew so much about the subject, and then you start to talk to the scientists and you're like, yeah, I'm going to leave this to them. But everyone was absolutely lovely and really welcoming. They all welcomed us into their homes and their lives, and I did feel really comfortable. But I do go into a lot of people's houses naturally anyway, doing their hair and things like that. So maybe that's why I felt comfortable, because I'm just used to seeing lots of different people and things like that. But yeah, it's it's something I'm used to, being the only black person in the room, to be honest. So I just embrace that.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to kind of finish up now, but I wanted to ask all of you, I didn't want this conversation to end feeling, I want it to end feeling hopeful. So I wanted to ask each of you what kind of things you do personally, or if you have any advice for anyone who is wanting to take their first steps into finding out about the climate crisis and doesn't know what to do or how to start. And secondly, what do you do to deal with the stress of it, to deal with the climate anxiety that you might experience?
Yeah, it's it can be very overwhelming. We've worked really hard with our films over the years. I mean, this is an outlier. It's not really in the pattern of the general films, but generally we really focus on positive stories and solution-focused stuff. And there is lots of really cool things happening in Cornwall. It's a funny little corner of the country, but it's very ahead of the curve in a lot of ways, particularly on climate and environment stuff. So it has felt like a positive job to be doing, going out and meeting people who are just getting on with it quietly and doing stuff. But I've really noticed, and I suppose it's just very much being aware of the news all the time and what's happening across the Atlantic. I've got very burned out, and I have recognised that I'm probably not doing very well at times. So I'm actually giving myself a bit of a break at the moment. Over the next couple of months, I'm lucky I'm able to step back a little bit from this, and I've just started taking a couple of days a week to go and volunteer on different projects, because I think it's really important to actually feel you've got some agency, even if it's something small. I'm volunteering at a local community farm, and I'm helping out a friend who's bought a bit of land that he's rewilding. They're not going to change the world, but they are changing those little areas, and I think when you have these little pockets of positive stuff going on, just getting outside and doing something practical and physical and getting your hands dirty and growing some potatoes, it just feels really much more positive than sitting in front of a laptop feeling filled with doom.
Ditto to a lot of what Claire said until she got to growing the potatoes, because I have just not got a green thumb and I can't grow anything. So but I encourage other people to do that. And I did used to do, I don't do this now because I'm much more into my local politics, but I did used to go and do presentations in schools in Sussex, secondary and primary schools. And it was so encouraging seeing the enthusiasm and interest of the especially the younger children, who would get really excited about something like even growing seeds and things. So some of them would come who maybe lived in a high rise in Brighton or something, and then would come and sort of see what the countryside could offer and how important it is to maintain that. I've sort of went into a very deep, anxious space, which I described earlier. And strangely, since I've really felt that fear so viscerally, I couldn't stay in that place. And I've never really dropped back into it. And I think sometimes that's how it works, when you really feel the fear. And then somehow, I don't now. I can't really explain why, but it's I've faced and thought about the worst that could happen and thought, well, let's just try and make sure we don't get to that place. And that just gives one a certain impetus. So I am sort of, well into my life, and part of me also just thinks I'm grateful actually for everything that we still have, and I appreciate every snowy day and every it really feels that way. I'm still grateful for it, because you never know when you're going to lose anything, a parent or a dog or a plant you're trying to grow.
Gratitude is a must.
Yes. Just enjoy it while you have it. Some kind of gratitude thing. I'm not very good at the practice of it, but I can literally feel gratitude. And I think some people, we were talking about the children thing, but someone actually said on a call recently that there's some kind of feeling that even children that are born now are somehow in the universe asking to be born. I mean, if you really want to go down that route, I thought that was quite a cool thing as well. A bit out there, a bit like some of the things in the film, but maybe everything's going to be better than we think, and there is scope for some fantastic things that will happen if people work in community and support one another. So happy to sort of look at it that way.
With myself, I'm just trying to do my bit by just try not to buy everything brand new. I think with my generation, we are enjoying like thrifting and things again, and it's coming back in, because I know when I was at school, everyone was like, oh, everything has to be brand new. And now with vintage and things like that coming around, I think it's really amazing, because the fashion industry has a massive toll on climate. Things like using reusable cups is also great for the environment, and I think just great conversations as well is really helping with people, and just being able to say what we're feeling and what we think the next steps could be. But I'm also hopeful. I think that eventually we are going to crack this and we are going to have a better world, because there is no other alternative really. So yeah, I think we just need to stay positive, and that we need to try and do our best, because as long as we make our own changes, if everyone was to make one change, it would make a massive difference to the world. So yeah,
I would, and
Oh yes, and also I'm making some positive films about nice things that are happening in the world. Because when you scroll, I've been recently scrolling through my phone and just horrible videos and things, and I get off and I feel really drained and just sad and just crying, and I think it's time for some positivity in the world, because there is good things happening, and I think one good story is enough to keep going. So yeah.
That leads into my very final question. It's just really you can plug yourselves. So I would like to know, how can we stay in touch with you all? And if there's any projects or anything you'd like to shine a light on, this is your chance.
Oh, thank you. Well, I would just like to say we have 7 more films that are already made. So please do check those out. They've got some great stories, got some beautiful scenery and photography from Cornwall, which most people like to see a bit of Cornwall, some beautiful sea scenes and things. So all those films are on our website, which is cornwallclimate.org. And follow us on socials. Thank you.
Jenny, anything you'd like to plug?
Very lovely to be given the opportunity, but it's one of those things. There are various sort of local projects that I am involved in and things, but it's just quite tricky while you're doing this elected official job. You have to be seen to be open to different that. So there's a whole conflict of interest thing. So like recently there's a sort of estate near us who were looking for people to come in and sort of sponsor things, and I thought, okay, I'd like to do that, and then I thought, no, I need to pull back. I've got another 2 or 3 years where I've slightly got to be careful where I am. After that, I'll be free, I'll be out there, my website will be sort of a bit more active, so I'll look for you then, and these two, of course. So yes, thank you though. Yeah.
And Jaz, you're making some new films or new content?
Yes, yeah. So I'm starting my positive journey on Jaz Njie Outdoors. Njie spelled Njie, if anyone doesn't know. And yeah, I'm just basically me out and about doing some different things. I'm going to be trying to work with some charities and filming some bits with them, and just good things that are happening with conservation and giving people hope.